Now I'd like to help kick off the premiere of an exciting new comedy show, which you're all going to enjoy for a long, long time. Starring Tom.
We would like to begin this evening's entertainment with a very, very special love song, and I'd like...
Our relationship, I think at that point, things were coming down on us pretty hard.
Tom and Dick Smothers.
Well, was that it?
Yep, I like to hit 'em hard and get out quick.
Tommy, that's a stupid song.
Back in the 1960s, American television was like a carefully controlled box. Three big networks, NBC, ABC, and CBS, decided what millions of families would watch every night. It was mostly safe stuff, following the rules of what was considered okay. CBS was really good at this, with popular shows that didn't cause any trouble, but the world outside the TV was changing fast. Young people were standing up against war and asking questions about everything. CBS knew it needed something new to keep people watching, especially on Sunday nights when NBC had all the popular shows. That's when the idea for the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour came along. Tom and Dick Smothers were two brothers who did light, easy comedy. Tom played the goofy, childish brother, and Dick was the smart, musical one. CBS thought they were safe, just harmless fun for families. The show started on February 5th, 1967, and the first episode was exactly what CBS expected. Music, jokes between the brothers, and simple comedy skits. But Tom Smothers had bigger ideas. He didn't just want to make people laugh. He wanted to make them think. Slowly and carefully, Tom started changing the show. Underneath the humor, he began inviting guests who had something important to say. First, there was Pete Seeger, a famous singer who was against the war. Then came Harry Belafonte, Joan Baez, Jefferson Airplane, and The Who. These weren't just entertainers. They were artists with messages about war, unfairness, and freedom. The show also hired young writers who understood what young people were thinking. The comedy skits gradually went from silly jokes to smart comments about politics and society. The show still looked the same on the outside, but inside, everything was changing. Young viewers loved it. College students started quoting lines from the show. For the first time, there was a TV program that spoke their language and talked about things they cared about. But many older viewers and TV stations in the South were not happy. They sent angry letters complaining about what was being shown. CBS was in a tough spot. The show was getting good ratings, especially with young people, but they were losing control of what went on the air. Tom refused to change jokes or kick off guests if he thought their message was important. Many episodes had to be quickly changed right before they were shown. By the second season, the show was more than just comedy. It was a place where ideas that other TV shows were scared to touch could be heard. The musical guests pushed things even further. Jefferson Airplane sang about drugs. The Who played so loud and wild that they broke the sound equipment. Joan Baez sang a song for her husband, who was in jail for refusing to join the military. The comedy skits got bolder, too. Pat Paulson, a comedian on the show, pretended to run for president. His fake campaign speeches made fun of real politicians by promising silly things, like building more potholes to test how patient voters were. It seemed harmless, but it made real politicians look bad because it showed how fed up people were with politics. The biggest trouble came from David Steinberg. He did comedy skits that looked like church sermons. Dressed like a religious leader, Steinberg would mix Bible stories with what was happening in the news, making jokes about politics and power. This made many religious viewers very angry. In October 1968, some CBS stations refused to show one of Steinberg's skits because they thought it made fun of religion. CBS got over 300 angry phone calls and letters in just 1 week. But young people loved Steinberg's performances. Students wrote down his jokes. College newspapers wrote articles about what he said. Secret recordings of his skits that CBS had cut were passed around on campuses. For many young Americans, this was the only TV show that showed them the real world they lived in. The more popular the show became with young viewers, the more CBS worried. They made stricter rules. Every episode had to be sent in 10 days early to be checked. Tom Smothers often ignored this deadline on purpose, keeping his controversial stuff until the last minute. Behind the scenes, meetings between Tom and the people in charge at CBS turned into angry arguments. CBS started watching every script and every guest invitation very carefully. Dick Smothers found himself stuck in the middle, trying to keep the show on the air while his brother kept pushing harder against the limits. By early 1969, CBS had lost its patience. Local stations were threatening to stop showing the program. The companies that paid for commercials were getting nervous. When Tom decided to bring David Steinberg back for another controversial sermon, CBS knew they had reached their breaking point. In early April 1969, Tom Smothers finished an episode that he knew would cause trouble. David Steinberg was back with a new performance that was more direct and political than anything he had done before. The stage was set up to look like a church, with a spotlight shining on the pulpit. Steinberg came out dressed as a rabbi. In just 5 minutes, he changed the biblical story of Moses into a story about modern people protesting against war. In Steinberg's version, Moses wasn't just following God's orders. He was following what he believed was right, just like young people who refused to fight in a war they thought was wrong. The most shocking moment came when Moses looked right at Pharaoh and said, "Sorry, Mr. President, but take your army and go. I will not help you anymore." The audience in the studio cheered loudly, but the people in charge at CBS saw this as a direct attack on President Nixon. This was exactly what they had been trying to avoid for months. The skit ended with a folk group singing a song called No More Promised Lands. The words told young people to stop believing empty promises from the government and to make their own decisions about war and peace. Steinberg threw his prayer shawl into the audience and shouted, "Peace, not war." When CBS received this tape, everything changed. Unlike previous episodes, this one was immediately blocked. CBS said the episode hadn't been sent in on time and broke their agreement. Tom Smothers argued back, saying the tape had been sent on time, but CBS was taking too long to review it. In private meetings, the people in charge at CBS, led by William Paley, demanded that Steinberg's entire performance be cut out if the episode was going to air. Tom refused to make any changes. On April 4th, 1969, CBS ended their contract with the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. There was no announcement, no explanation to the viewers. The next week, the show's time slot was filled with Haw, a safe country comedy that would never cause problems. The episode that was banned never aired in the United States, but it was shown on Canadian television, which wasn't controlled by CBS. Soon, secret copies were being passed around on American college campuses. Student newspapers wrote about what was in it, calling a sad but important goodbye to a show that dared to say what others were afraid to. The public's reaction was split. Young viewers saw as proof that CBS cared more about politics than free speech. Small protests happened at CBS offices in several cities, but groups that were more conservative praised the decision, saying it was necessary to protect what was morally right. For Tom and Dick Smothers, the cancellation was a huge blow. Offers for television work disappeared overnight. Tom was seen as too dangerous to hire. Dick, although he was more careful, was also blacklisted because he was part of the show. But the brothers didn't give up. They sued CBS for breaking their contract, saying the cancellation was just an excuse to silence their political views. The legal fight lasted 4 years. In 1973, a court ruled in their favor, ordering CBS to pay them over $770,000. However, by that time, their careers in television were already over. The cancellation also affected the relationship between the brothers. Dick later said that he didn't always agree with Tom's stubborn way of doing things. He thought that if Tom had been willing to make some compromises, the show could have lasted longer and had a bigger impact. But they stayed partners and friends, continuing to perform in smaller places for their loyal fans. The effect of the show's cancellation spread through the television industry. Many young producers and writers saw it as a lesson about the limits of being creative when you're up against the power of the big TV networks. Laura Michaels, who later created Saturday Night Live, said that without the Smothers Brothers, there would be no SNL. The show had proved that television could mix comedy with serious political talk, even if it came at a cost. For young artists, especially comedians, the Smothers Brothers became symbols of being brave in their art. The tapes that CBS had cut became things that people collected, passed around by students and artists. who were doing things outside the mainstream, like hidden treasures. Some skits at CBS had said no to were later found in the personal collections of the writers, adding to the story of what had been lost. Over time, what people thought about the show began to change. What had once seemed dangerous or wrong started to look brave and ahead of its time. In 2008, almost 40 years after the show was canceled, Tom Smothers received a special Emmy Award. In his speech, he said simply, "Peace is harder than war," a quote that has been repeated many times since. In 2010, both brothers were inducted into the Television Academy Hall of Fame, finally getting official recognition for what they had done for television history. It was a late but important moment in fixing their reputation. The show's political impact was also confirmed years later when it was found out that Tom and Dick Smothers had been put on President Nixon's list of enemies in the early 1970s. While they didn't face the same direct harm as some politicians and journalists on the list, being included was clear proof that their show had really bothered those in power. By 2022, all the old stuff from the show, scripts, tapes, and skits that never aired, was given to the University of California, Santa Barbara, to be kept safe. This was the first time that many of the show's private papers became available to people who study these things, including some skits that CBS had ordered to be destroyed. Putting these old materials online helped change how a new generation, who had never seen TV that mixed protest with comedy, thought about the show's legacy. When Tom Smothers passed away in late 2023, social media was full of clips from the show, old pictures, and kind words from famous comedians. People like Stephen Colbert, John Oliver, and Sarah Silverman all mentioned him as one of the first people to do modern political comedy. They talked about him not as someone from the past, but as part of the foundation that made American television more daring and willing to speak out. Surprisingly, the show started becoming popular again online. VHS tapes that were once secretly passed around college campuses were now being put online and spreading quickly on YouTube, Reddit, TikTok, and other places. The famous line, "Mom always like you best," became the sound for countless internet memes and jokes. A clip of Pat Paulson's fake 1968 presidential campaign, where he promised to solve all problems by waiting for them to go away, has been shared millions of times in today's political climate. Skits that were once seen as too sensitive are now viewed as important examples of thoughtful satire. This new interest isn't just about missing the old days. It's recognizing that the show was ahead of its time. The archives at UC Santa Barbara continue to be looked at by researchers, students, and people making documentaries. Footage that never aired, Tom Smothers' handwritten notes, skits that were cut, and letters from CBS all help paint a clearer picture of how much censorship the show went through. Modern comedy show hosts have been clear about the show's influence. John Oliver, Trevor Noah, and Hassan Minhaj have all talked about how the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour influenced how they approach comedy. Not because of how the show looked, but because it showed that comedy didn't have to just be silly fun. It could be a way to get people thinking and talking. In meetings about media, the show is often mentioned as part of how critical television has developed. Even though it's no longer on the air, the show's spirit lives on through its famous lines, its symbols, and its fearless way of telling the truth. When parts of the band sermon were shown as a special event at the New York Television Festival, young audiences saw the whole controversial episode for the first time. Instead of seeming old and out of date, the content felt sharp and surprising, with a level of directness that few shows dare to show even today. What are your thoughts on the legacy of the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour? Did you know about the controversy surrounding the show? Share your opinions in the comments below. And if you found this story interesting, please like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into fascinating moments in television history.